everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Well, I've got an exciting new kit for you guys today. Today we're going to be building up the new Tamiya 35th scale Marder III. And actually I shouldn't call it a completely new kit. And what I mean by that is the actual hull of the tank and the majority of the parts inside are the original early 2000s kit, which was a beautiful kit. Built it up myself actually 2 times I think in the past. Now Tamiya has taken that kit that was so nice and they've updated a bunch of parts on it, including the rubber band tracks are gone now. We now have nice link and link tracks. We have new figures, new drive sprocket, and a few other parts inside there too. So that way you've taken a really nice kit and really upped it quite a bit more. And it's great to have those kind of things, because that was one of the weaker spots of the kit, were the rubber band tracks, which are okay, but over time they can dry out and crack and stuff, whereas the new link and link tracks hold up really, really well. So, like I said, I've built this thing in the past. It's a very nice kit and goes together wonderful, so I'm excited to share that with you guys today. So, let's get started. Okay, we're going to start off with the hull of the vehicle, and the very first step is we're gluing on a brand new piece, and this is a little platform for the driver of the vehicle. And as you can see, it is not a bathtub style hull, and the reason it's not a bathtub style hull is they made it individual pieces so they can mold on all these accessories in place. So not a problem though gluing it together. Actually, it is if you get it the wrong way. And you can see everything kind of fits together nice and easy and tight. And I put a little bit of glue on both sides, and then I go back and run a bead down the inside, and that's going to make sure that it's going to stick together real well. And I'll kind of in real time just go down the line and show you how the actual vehicle goes together here, since it's a pretty basic design. You can see how that just fits together perfectly. And with that in place, we can go ahead and put this, rear plate in there. Just like that. And then we have this plate. Now this vehicle, of course, is based on the 38T chassis. That panel will slide right back in there. And pull this out just a little bit, just so we could get the glue down inside there. And we'll put a light little bead right inside here and here. And you can see right off we have pretty much the whole chassis assembled, except for this back panel, which we will glue on right now. And I'm putting heavy dose of glue right on that back plate to hold it, and then we'll follow up by running some right down on the insides in here. And doing the same. So as you can see, then all we have to do now, the next step calls out that this panel be just temporarily placed on here while we're working on it. So I'll look ahead on it and see if it can be attached permanently. Right now I actually don't remember how I built my original one. So we'll come back and we'll start working on the wheels. Okay, I've gone ahead and attached the top there, and while we're letting all of this dry, we want it to fully set up. We've cut out and sanded the road wheels and all the suspension pieces, got the idlers ready, and built one of the drive sprockets, and we're going to build the second drive sprocket and show you. But what I thought I would talk to you about for a second is getting a lot of people asking about the new Tamiya sharp pointed cutters that I use. These are their newer ones, the 74123s. That's the newest one, and they're a very slim jaw type plastic cutter. And I started using these about 2 months ago and absolutely fell in love with them, and can't even keep them in stock in my store because we sell so many of them right now. But what I wanted to basically do is just kind of give you a close-up and show you why these are so good. Because with that tiny little point on it, you can get it inside this little area here, and for trimming these little tight, little hard to get at spaces that a regular cutters or sometimes don't work very well, these are perfect for that because they have such a small front jaw that you can get right inside there and just nip off the pieces. And you can see there's like the slightest little tiny bit that a half a second with a sanding stick, and it's back to a perfect piece. So what I thought I'd show you on this is these do have a the drive sprockets do have a poly cap inside of them, so we want to fit that inside there and then glue both sides together. And now we can go ahead and start working on the suspension. And I'll show you the suspension and how it goes together. And it's a very simple, easy to build piece. It's just a matter of putting a little bit of glue, getting the leaf springs into place, and then on either side you want to get the suspension arm, and you want to make sure, put a little bit of glue on the leaf spring, that the piece goes all the way down inside of it, just like that. And when you do that on both sides, you're going to get all 4 wheels touch the ground properly. And put that like that. Put a touch of glue right in through there, and just like that, it's ready to go. And then of course the wheel will fit right over on top of it. So we can go ahead and finish assembling all of the pieces here, and we'll come back and move on to the next step. And the last little builder's tip as you are assembling the suspension arms, flip it over to the bottom here and take a look at all the arms and give them all a good squeeze to make sure they all stay nice and tight to this piece here. And that'll keep your wheels nice and straight, and that way you won't have a weaving pattern of the wheels that don't line up perfectly. So we're going to let this dry for a good 15-20 minutes before we do any more work on it. That way we're going to be for sure to have a nice straight wheels and suspension. Okay, I'm going to spend a little extra time on assembling the tracks because that's actually the main difference on this kit from their older kit. And I've just cut the pieces off the sprue here, and we've also not glued in the road wheels. We're going to try to put these tracks together in such a way that we don't have to attach any of this stuff right now, so we can go back and make it painting easier. Now we've got our very top piece here. This is all one big piece, so it's ready to go. You can see the sag fits in there perfectly. That one will go. Then what I'm going to show you right here is these are the 8 individual tracks that are going to go around the front. And the way we're going to get those together is just carefully lining them up with a pair of tweezers. And when we get them to sit into place, then we want to lightly just put a little bit of Tamiya cement right down the center of it, just blotting it in there, and it'll, by capillary attraction, just float through the or flow through the entire piece. So we've got a couple of those more to glue on, and hopefully you can see them pretty well on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to let these tracks set up for about 4 or 5 minutes. We don't want the glue to completely dry because we want to be able to wrap it around this drive sprocket right here. So we're going to let that dry for a few minutes, and we'll come back and show you how the next step goes on. Okay, it's been a few minutes now, and now this is the group of individual tracks. Let me slide this back a tiny bit more. That's the group of individual tracks, and this is the long pre-curved piece that's already molded as one piece. So we want to put a little bit of adhesive on that, and we want to give these two groups a few seconds to melt together. Not fully dry, just to melt together enough. And we'll come back in a few more minutes to show you how it all wraps around. Okay, we've let it sit up for a few minutes. First thing I want to show you guys is that you got to make sure the tracks are going the right direction. And real close up, the pad right here, that always faces towards the back. So when the vehicle is going to go like this. So nice thing, polycaps on the drive sprockets, which means we can take the drive sprocket off. The cement should have set up on this enough but not be sticky so it won't stick onto here. And we can wrap this right around here. Put this back into place. Get it to the position we need it to go. And then we can go ahead and glue these two pieces very carefully. You don't want to get any on the drive sprocket because we want to be able to pull all of the track off afterwards so we can paint it separately. So I'm going to let this, I'm going to pull this down here. We're going to let this piece of track set up and dry kind of in that position. Then we'll come back and glue this piece into position right there. And we'll start working our way back around. The bottom piece is one big long flat piece, so that's not going to be a difficult one at all. In fact, yeah, it does go like that. And then we'll be able to glue those two together. And see, that's why it's very important we get the wheels nice and straight, because if they didn't, that is not going to line up at all. And finally, there'll be the exact same pattern of doing this, but backwards on this piece. And we will just not attach the last little piece of track to the top piece here. So we can spread it and pull it all apart once it dries. Okay, we've put the back of the track on, as you can see here, and we've let it dry for quite a while. So we have our general shape, and I actually ended up making the broken point right here at the bottom, thinking it'll be a little bit easier to get on. And just show you what we'll basically do once we get it all painted. It'll just be a matter of fitting that into place, which don't forget you can remove the drive sprocket if it's a little tight for you. And it's just a matter of spinning that around, getting that to line up, and then carefully, you don't want to flex this too much, but just enough to get it to wrap, and then come around, and we'll be able to, once we get this painted, put a touch of glue on the bottom, and we have both of our tracks ready to go. So that's simple enough, and that right there makes these tracks so nice. They will hold up for, for as long as the model kit does, and they have a nice sag to them, and they look great all the way around. And we can paint them separately if you follow the instructions on how to put them together like that. Okay, now we can start building up the structure that holds the gun and the crew, and that is a matter of putting that into place. And I've gone ahead and just basically assemble the ammunition racks, stowage racks here, and these will get fitted just in like this. Let all this stuff dry together, and then they'll got a few other little pieces on there, and I've kind of started to assemble this one already, and you can see how it will come right up inside here and get glued just into place like that, and you have our side. The only other thing I need to add on this one is the radio. So I will add all of the ammunition bins, all those other pieces, and get those glued into place, and we'll come back and start working on the gun. Okay, we've got both sides of the fighting compartment on and the two front fenders. You might also know too, we've put a few other little accessory pieces on, like the barrel lock, the front light, and a few other little pieces. We're going to leave the bulk of the tools off for now because those will be a little bit easier to paint and off the vehicle. Now we're going to start working on the muffler system. Now we're going to leave the muffler off until the very end for this portion in here, because this gets woven in here and bolted to the side. And then we have the actual end piece, and this is the photo edge piece. And calling out by the instructions, they want you to take the F sprue, because it's fairly thick, and use that to wrap it around as tight as we can. And then we use the wire to like rope it all back together on there. So we might have to heat this up a little bit, because this is the type of metal that's kind of like sprung. So, because it wants to go back into its original shape. But we'll work on that for a little while. The only other thing we really have to do now is we've got the tracks built, the reels, is just start to assemble the gun. So we'll start working on that in a few minutes as soon as we get the rest of the exhaust system built. Okay, we've got all of our muffler pipes built up, including that shroud around that we wrap the wire behind it to hold it in place. We've got the other one we're going to weather and paint these separately and then attach them to the vehicle. I've assembled most of the parts of the gun here, and that is just strictly because there's just a bunch of tiny little parts that's really kind of hard to film. So the last little thing we need to do is, put it on backwards here, is to install the gun. Now the gun itself is probably the only weak part of the kit, in the sense that it is a 50-50 barrel. It's sliced in half. Now I've been going back and forth with multiple grades of Tamiya's foam sandpaper, starting off at 400, 600. I have 1,000 around here too, and then gonna sand it and smooth it off with 1,500 once we're done with it. But and I don't mean a weak spot in the sense it's just a lot of work. Whereas if now all the newer kits are coming out with like either a slide molded barrel or a one-piece barrel, so not a huge thing. I still got a little bit more sanding, so I'm not going to attach any of this right now. But the barrel will slide right inside here. We're going to put it in the forward position, of course. And then after we get the rest of the barrel sanded, we can put the shield on it right here. And it'll mount up inside here. And basically, that is the entire gun. There is a poly cap inside here, which will correspond with this peg here, so the gun will be able to move back and forth. And also, just be very careful while you're building it. You can actually get the gun to actually to rotate or move up and down too. Grab it down the bottom down here. Once everything gets attached on that, we have that ability. But I've got a little bit more sanding to do on the barrel. I don't want to damage anything taking it apart here. Yeah, there it goes. And so we'll finish up sanding this, get this really smooth, and we'll put the rest of the gun together. Then it's just a matter of just putting a couple other accessories on top here, like the hatches, things like that, and we are pretty much done with the general construction. We've left off all the tools and all the accessories just because we want to paint those separately and attach them after we're done painting. So I'll finish up the gun, we'll come back and we'll start painting the vehicle. One other little builder's tip I can give you is if you notice on the slide where the gun recoils on, there is a big seam down the middle, and that is because it's a two-part piece. And you can spend a ton of time trying to sand that out. What I found the easiest to do is just to cut a little thin piece of styrene that you'll be able to glue inside there. Cut the end off right there, sand that back piece off, and once you weather it and paint it up, you'll never even notice that it's inside there. Okay, now that the tracks are dry, we are using a coat of AK enamel streaking grime, and we're just going to put a very liberal coat mixed with a little bit of thinner to make it flow really well all over the tracks. And this is kind of a dark blackish brown too, but it'll soak into all the little areas, and making sure we do the fronts. All of the track like that. And then we're going to use just two other little colors of pigment. First one we're going to use is Old Rust, which is just kind of like a darkish color, darkish red brown color, and then light sienna. And you got to be careful with the tracks when they're in this condition right here, because you don't want to end up breaking all that work that you did. So now we're just going to dip our brush into the Old Rust and kind of blot it in. And not to worry, it's actually not going to look too much like rust actually. It's going to just kind of give it some reddish tones or reddish brown tones once we mix in the light sienna too. We're going to dip a little bit of that on there. And it's also going to start mixing with the streaking grime that we put on there. And it's a messy project, but you just keep going over it and just keep blotting in the different pigments. And you can of course change these colors. And you will be very surprised when you see, once all of this dries, the look we'll get out of it. And you want to just keep taking that light sand and keep blotting it in. Let it build up on the tracks. Here is what both sets of tracks look like once they are completely dried. And you can see we get a nice dirty kind of mottled effect on all of the tracks to give it a nice, what I think is actually a really good look on those tracks. Now we could also take some shinier track wash and with a toothbrush and kind of like spritz it on it and make little dots of other kind of stuff, which we still might do depending on how it looks compared to the rest of the vehicle once we weather the rest of the vehicle. And here is the dark yellow over the brown. I think it does offer a nice little warm tone to it that you don't normally get with like a black undercoat or just having the regular basic plastic underneath there. Okay, I've gone ahead and just sprayed the entire model with the striping of some red brown and some dark green, and clear coated the entire model with a little of Tamiya's dull coat. And now we're going to do a little bit of chipping, and I've taken a foam brush here and taken a pair of scissors and just nipped away at all these little pieces to kind of make it uneven. And we're just going to dip our brush into some NATO black, then blot out quite a bit of it there. And then we're going to start putting some scratches. And we're just going to take the foam brush and start tapping it around areas that we want to have lots of scratches and chips. On the fenders. Now we're also going to take the brownish color that we sprayed on the tracks, and we're going to blot a little bit of that on and give our chips a little bit of depth. And these chips are going to be ones that have worn a little bit and have a little bit more of a brownish tone to it, as if the metal is oxidizing. Now that we have that area chipped up, we can apply our extra track links. A little bit of super glue, and as you can see, we've weathered those up pretty much the same way, maybe with a touch more rust in it since they're tracks that aren't being used on the vehicle. And then we can go ahead and put the final brace across the top here too. And we've got a few other pieces of extra track too that we're also going to put on as well. Okay, now I'm going to show you the 4 different steps that we took to get the wheel from looking like this to the final dirtied up wheel that we have. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with this clean wheel, and we're going to use AK's brown wash for dark yellow. And we're just going to apply really small amount all over all of the bolts. And you can see right off the top, it just makes all of them just pop right out. And really adds some nice definition to it. And that's basically what that step is right there after it's dried. And you can put more or less depending on how full you want them down. So after it dries, it's going to look like this step right here. In fact, put a little bit more on this wheel. And then we'll slide this one down since this one's dry already. Now we're going to make this one look like this particular wheel right here. And we're going to use a little bit of a dark streaking grime on this one. And we're just going to put a little bit around the hub. We're not going to put too crazy on it. But we want a little bit darker brown brownish red, I should say. That's just to give it some contrast to it. And you can put a little or as much as you want on that. You can put a little on some of the rims down here. And if you think there's too much, put a little touch of thinner on it, and that'll kind of like blend it out. And after it completely dries, depending on how much you put on, of course, now, put a little bit more on there and give you an idea how we got to this here. We get this particular piece right here. And what we've done on this one right now to get into this area is we've taken a little bit of light sienna taken some light sienna with a little bit of thinner on it, kind of blotted into it. Light sienna pigment powder, I should say, too. And then after it completely dries, you'll have something that looks more like this, which the final step that you can do if you want, you can either if there are a few little bolts that you want to have stick out a little bit more, you can go back and just put a little bit more of your brown wash for dark yellow in certain areas, just on some that are kind of like cleaned off a little bit. Just want to build up a bunch of layers. Okay, here we are. I put the wheels in place. We've just dry fitted them on here, haven't actually glued them on. Just wanted to show you what they look like in place. I've also taken a big giant flat soft brush, and you can knock off any of the excess powder that builds up on there. Now you might also notice inside the behind the wheels, we've done the exact same technique with a little bit extra powder build up, and you can see it kind of looks like a dried on mud that is built up on the inside of underneath the fenders, we'll call it. Okay, now we're going to start weathering over the vehicle, and we'll kind of give you a overview of what we're going to be doing here. Right now I'm just putting on a coat of enamel thinner, and that is just to get the surface wet, so when we put our other products on, they'll flow a lot better. You'll also notice too, I forgot to put the decals on a little while ago, but we've gone ahead and done those and sealed those in, of course, with dull coat again to make sure that it's going to completely keep the decals in without popping off. First product we're going to use is AK Interactive's German Vehicle Dark Yellow Wash. And it's kind of a sludgy brown wash that, and I'm just going to show you briefly on some of these areas. You can see that it'll start to build up. And if it starts to streak like that, not a problem. But we want to go over all of these little bolt heads. Anything that sticks out that we want to give some definition to. And then up on the top, we're going to use a little bit of the streaking rust effect on any one of these areas that have some rust. Now, it's going on pretty heavy, of course, but we can drag it down. Just like that. And then finally, you can take your flat brush and kind of just pull down on it. Take away most of the excess. And finally, we will use our brown earth deposits on any little areas that we want to have a little tiny bit of earth buildup, you know, a little bit of dirt. And it's a liquid product that's kind of similar to the gray wash. I'll put some in there, and what'll happen when that dries in there, it'll leave like a little bit of dirt behind on it, as you'd expect in some of the little nooks and crannies in there. Now I'm going to go over the entire vehicle using those, in constantly going back and forth of streaking and dotting and just putting all those colors together. We'll also be doing a similar process up underneath here, but we'll be adding some light sienna to the underside of the fenders to give them a dirt effect. Okay, we have the tracks on this side now, as you can see, and the easiest steps to put them on is to remove the drive sprocket first and foremost. Get the drive sprocket wrapped around the tracks, put that into place there, and then gradually add the wheels in, glue them in, and finally glue the last two pieces of track together. And that was the easiest progression to get the tracks to go on properly. Like the way all of the different tones of dirt and mud and rust and stuff like that all blend together to make a nice realistic weathered effect. Okay, well here we go, guys. Here is our completed model. And I'll kind of go over real quickly. It's just some of the last things that we went ahead and did. Obviously, we put on an antenna, and we went and painted and weathered all the tools and put those into place, as well as built up some shells and a few other parts like that, which now we'll turn on the turntable here and give you guys a little 360. Hopefully you can see I actually have some real brass 75mm shells back there, or scale 75mm shells back there, and painted up a few of the other rounds for the inside. Very happy with the weathering and the way it came out. The AK products really did a wonderful job on the kit. Now, one other thing, also very happy that Tamiya has gone back and updated these kits, shall we say, putting on the new tracks and a few other little parts like that, plus the crew, which I will show you at the very end of the video. The crew, I didn't have time to build those up. I don't normally build figures, as you guys know, but they are some actually decent looking figures. Now, another thing that I'm experimenting with is I made up some foliage here and actually made it out of the same stuff I made my trees out of, and then I have a leaf punch, a 35th scale leaf punch, that I've gone ahead and punched real leaves, different colors of leaves, and got it to put that. And I've built a bunch of these up here, and I've seen quite a few pictures of the real tanks in Normandy with these branches and things all over it. So what I thought I would do is, now that you've actually seen the kit built up and see how nice it looks the way it is, I thought I would give this an experiment and tie these on and see what you guys think of it, because they look pretty good in person after we got them done. So I think on the vehicle, I think it would actually turn out pretty good. So I'm going to stop the camera for a few minutes, go ahead and attach all of these, and we'll come back in a minute. And there's what it looks like with the branches just placed in there. I didn't actually go ahead and tie them on yet because I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not. I'm planning on doing some more dioramas in the very near future, and really wanted to do like an ambush scheme on it, and that's what made me come up with the idea for doing this. And I actually kind of like it. Looking at the real pictures, I mean, those are real leaves. They're stamped out into the shape of real leaves too, so they look like it. We've got multiple colors because we used real leaves, like I was telling you, so really kind of like the way it is. I think I might experiment more with this, making some more of those, kind of really filling it up. And if you've seen pictures of some of the armor in Normandy for the Germans, they had it absolutely covered with every kind of tree branch you could possibly imagine, since the United States and Britain controlled the skies over the Normandy area. So they were trying to camouflage themselves in as much as possible. So hey, I want to thank you guys as always for watching, and please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming.